Just getting started. Dun, 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 dun. Hello. We're just getting started here. Getting people rolling in. Hello, everybody. So today we're going to read The Outsiders by S.E. The Outsiders is a story about poor versus rich, but it's also a story about finding where differences can unite us and make a change, and deciding that we aren't who we were meant to be, and we can change our situation if we choose to. It's also a story that was written by a teenager about teenage life. There's a reason why this book is in a lot of freshman English courses. So my freshman English course, when I teach ninth grade high school English, we read this book. Takes place in the 1960s. It's about the struggles of being in gangs, being in tough situations, and where violence ensues, and maybe trying to stay out of trouble. And sometimes it's hard to stay out of trouble as a teenager. And it's also, just like The Great Gatsby, it's a great look into what life was like in America during the 1960s. That's why this book is important. Now, this is what the author wrote about the book. So, dear reader, it is very difficult for me to write about myself, and especially The Outsiders, which was written at a hindrance time in my life, was published by a series of mind-boggling, schizophrenic, and has gone further than any other author dared to dream. But I'll give a shot. I wrote The Outsiders when I was 16. Actually, I began it when I was 15, as a short story about a boy who was beaten up on his way home from the movies. But I didn't just write The Outsiders, I lived it. Looking back, I realized how important it was for me to have another life at that time, to be someone else, to deal with problems I had to face and write my way to some sort of understanding and coping. This is all hindsight at the time. I was mad about the social situation in my high school. I desperately wanted something to read that dealt realistically with teenage life. I know I was going to be a writer. I love to write. I began at grade school because I loved to read, and I liked the idea of making stories happen the way I wanted them to. By the time I was in high school, I had been practicing for years, so I was both, and not surprised when I received my publishing contract on the day I graduated from high school. The Outsider has taken me many places I never dreamed of going. It introduced me to people I would never otherwise have met, although the names Patrick Swayze, Tom Cruise, Matt Dillon, Rob Lowe, Emilio Estevez, and Ralph were familiar to most people and conjured visions of movie stars and glamour. I remember a group of sweet, goofy, incredible, talented, at all the time, incredible, normal teenage boys. I was involved in every aspect of the filming of the movie version of The Outsiders. And the memory I cherish most is hanging out with my boys. So yeah, it was actually one of the career-defining moments for a lot of those young actors, and got them big movie careers afterwards, especially Tom Cruise, Patrick Swayze. Not only for the respect, kindness, and friendship I personally received from him, but for the fact that he made the movie for the fans of the book. He shot a faithful adaptation, consulting me for everything from location to wardrobe. But it was the fans of the book he wanted to please. As far as I know, he is the only director to go back and assemble a more complete movie, The Outsiders, the complete novel DVD. Because of those fans asked him to. The fans, I received letters from every state, from dozens of foreign countries, from 12-year-olds and 40-year-olds, from convicts and policemen, teachers, social workers, and of course kids. Kids who are living lives like those in The Outsiders. Kids who can't imagine living lives like those in The Outsiders. Kids who read all the time. Ones who never before finished a book. The letters saying, I love the book are good. The ones that say I never liked to read before and now I read all the time are better. But the ones that say The Outsiders changed my life and I read it 15 years ago and I realized how much it had influenced my life choices frankly scare me. Who I am to change everyone's life? I guess the best reply is it's the book, not the author. It's the message, not the messenger. And a lot of times I feel that The Outsiders was meant to be written, and I was chosen to write it. It's certainly done more good than anything I could accomplish on a personal level. If this sounds like an overwhelming by the decades of incredible response to what began a short story, I started when I was 15 years old. Well, I guess that's the truth. Stay gold. So this book was written by a 15-year-old going through a hard time, and we're going to learn through this book what that hard time was. But this is still a fictional story. So chapter 1. When I stepped out into the bright sunlight, from the darkness of the movie house, I had only two things on my mind. Paul Newman and a ride home. I was wishing I looked like Paul Newman. He looks tough and I don't. But I guess my own looks aren't so bad. I have a light brown, almost red hair and greenish gray eyes. I wish they were more gray because I hate most guys that have green eyes, but I have to be content with what I have. My hair is long than a lot of boys, squared off in the back and long, and at the front it sides, but I'm a greaser, and most of the neighborhood rarely brothers to get a haircut. Besides, I look better with longer hair. I had a long walk home, no company, but I usually alone anyway, for no reason except that I like to watch movies undisturbed, so I can get into them and live them with the actors. When I see a movie with someone, it's kind of uncomfortable, like having someone read your book over your shoulder. I'm different that way. I mean, my second oldest brother, Soda, who is 16 going on 17, never cracks a book at all. And my oldest brother, Darrell, who we call Derry, works too long and hard to be interested in any story of drawing a picture. So I'm not like them, and nobody in our gang digs movies and books the way I do. For a while there, I thought I was the only person in the world that did, so I loaned it. Soda tries to understand at least which is more than Derry does, but Soda is different from anybody. He understands everything almost, like he's never hollering at me at all the time the way Derry is, or treating me as if I was 6 instead of 14. I love Soda more than I ever loved anyone, even Mom and Dad. He's always happy-go-lucky and grinning, while Derry's hard and firm and rarely grins at all. But then Derry's gone through a lot in his 20 years, grown up too fast. Soda Pup, I'll never grow up at all. I don't know which way's the best. I'll find out one of these days. Anyway, I went on walking home, thinking about the movie and then suddenly wishing I had the company. Greasers can't walk alone too much or they'll get jumped. Or someone will come by and scream, "Greaser!" at them, which doesn't make you feel too hot, if you know what I mean. We get jumped by the Socs. I'm not sure how you spell it, but it's an abbreviation for the socials. The jet set. The West Side rich kids. It's like the term greaser, which is used to class all the boys on the East Side. We're poorer than the Socs in the middle class. I reckon we're wilder, too. Not like the Socs who jump greasers and wreck houses and throw beer blasts for kicks and get editorials in the paper for being a public disgrace one day and then an asset to society the next. Greasers are almost like hoods. We steal things and drive old souped-up cars and hold up gas stations and have a gang fight once in a while. I don't mean I do things like that. Derry would unalive me if I got into trouble with police. Since Mom and Dad were unalived in an auto wreck, the three of us get to stay together only as long as we behave. So Soda and I stay out of trouble as much as we can, and we're careful not to get caught when we can't. I only mean the most greaser do things like that, just like we wear our hair long and dress in blue jeans and t-shirts. Or leave our shirt tails out and wear leather jackets and tennis shoes or boots. I'm not saying that neither socks or greasers are better, that's just the way things are. I could have waited to go to the movies until Derry or Soda Pop got off work. That would have gone with me or driven me there, or walked along, although Soda just doesn't sit long enough to enjoy a movie and they bore Derry to unaliving. Derry thinks his life is enough without expecting other people's. Or I could have gotten one of the gang to come along, one of the four boys Derry and Soda and I have grown up with and consider family. We're almost as close as brothers when you grow up in a tight-knit neighborhood like ours. You get to know each other real well. And if I had thought about it, I could have called Derry and he would have come by in his way and picked me up. Or Two-Bit Matthews, one of our gang, would have come to get me in his car if I had asked him, but sometimes I just don't use my head. It drives my brother Derry nuts when I don't stuff like that, because I'm supposed to be smart. I make good grades and I have a high IQ and everything, but I don't use my head. Besides, I like walking. I'm about to decide I don't like it so much, though, when I spotted that red trailing me. I was almost 2 blocks from home then, so I started walking a little faster. I had never been jumped, but I had seen Johnny after 4 Socs got a hold of him, and I wasn't pretty. Johnny was scared of his own shadow after that. Johnny was 16. I knew he wasn't any use, though, and the fast walking, I mean, even before the car pulled up beside me and 5 Socs got out. I got pretty scared. I'm kind of small for 14, even though I have a good build, and those guys were bigger than me. I automatically hitched my thumbs in my jeans and sloshed, wondering if I could get away if I made a break for it. I remember Johnny, his face all cut up and bruised, and I remember how he had cried when he found him. Half conscious in the corner, Lot Johnny had awful rough at him, and it took a lot to make him cry. Well, hello, Lay. How are you? Thanks for the gift. I was sweating, sometimes fierce. Although I was cold, I could feel my palms getting clammy and the perspiration running down my back. I got like that when I'm real scared. I glanced around for a pop bottle or a stick or something. Steve Randall, Soda Pop's best buddy, had once held off 4 guys with a busted bottle pop. But there was nothing, so I stood there like a bump on a log while they surrounded me. I don't use my head. They walked around slowly, silently, smiling. Ooh, clearing up the kitchen. That's good. Well, thanks for coming by. Hey, Grease, one said in an over-friendly voice. We're going to do you a favor, Grease. We're going to cut all that long grease hair off. He had on a Maridas shirt, and I can still see it. Blue. One of them laughed and cussed me out in a low voice. I couldn't think of anything to say. There just ain't a whole lot you can say while waiting to get mugged, so I kept my mouth shut. Need a haircut, Greaser? The medium-sized blonde pulled a knife out of his back pocket and flipped the blade open. I finally thought of something to say. No, I was backing up away from that knife. Of course, I backed right into one of them. They had me down in a second. They had my arms and legs pinned down, and one of them was sitting on my chest with his knees and my elbows. And if you don't think that hurts, you're crazy. I could smell English leather, shaving lotion, and stale tobacco, and I wondered foolishly if I would suffocate before they did anything. I was scared so bad I was wishing I would. I fought to get loose and almost did for a second. Then they tightened up on me, and the one on my chest slugged me a couple of times, so I stayed still, swearing at them between grasps. A blade was held against my throat. How'd you like that haircut to begin just below the chin? It occurred to me that they could unalive me. I went wild. I started screaming for soda, dairy, anyone. Someone put his hand over my mouth, and I bit it as hard as I could, tasting the blood running through my teeth. I heard a muttered curse and got slugged again. And then there were, stuffing a handkerchief in my mouth. One of them kept saying, "Shut up! Shut him up! For Pete's sake, shut him up!" Then there were shouts and the pounding of feet, and the Socs jumped up and left me lying there gasping, and I lay there wounded, wondering what world was happening. People were jumping over me and running by me, and I was too dazed to figure it out. Then someone had me under the armpits and was hauling me to my feet. It was Derry. "Are you all right, pony boy?" He was shaking me, and I wished he'd stop. I was dizzy enough anyway. I could tell it was Derry, though, partly because of the voice and partly because Derry's always rough with me without meaning to be. "I'm okay. Quit shaking me, Derry. I'm okay." He stopped instantly. "I'm sorry." He wasn't really. Derry isn't ever sorry for anything he does. It seems funny to me that he should look just exactly like my father and act exactly the opposite from him. My father was only 40 when he was unalive, and he looked 25, and a lot of people thought Derry and Dad were brothers instead of father and son. But they only looked alike. My father was never rough with anyone without meaning to be. Derry is 6'2" and broad-shouldered and muscular. He has dark brown hair and kicks out in front, and a split cowlick in the back, just like Dad's. But Derry's eyes are his own. He's got eyes that are like two pieces of pale blue-green ice. They got a determined set to them like the rest of them. He looks older than 20, tough, cool, and smart. He would be real handsome if his eyes weren't so cold. He doesn't understand anything that's not plain hard fact, but he uses his head. I sat down again, rubbing my cheeks where I'd been slugged the most. Jerry jammed his fists in his pockets. "They didn't hurt you too bad, did they?" They did. I was smarting and aching in my chest and was sore, and I was always so nervous my hands were shaking, and I wanted to start bawling, but you just don't say that to Derry. "I'm okay." Soda Pop came loping back. By then I had figured that all the noise I had heard was the gang coming to rescue me. He dropped down beside me, examining my head. "You got cut up a little, huh, pony boy?" I only looked at him blankly. I did. He pulled out a handkerchief, wet the end of it with his tongue, and pressed it gently against the side of my head. You're bleeding like a stick pig." "I am. Look." He showed me the handkerchief, reddened as if by magic. "Did they pull a blade on you?" I remember the voice. "Need a haircut, greaser?" The blade must have slipped while I was trying to shut him up, yeah. Soda is a handsomer than anyone else I know. Not like Derry. Soda's a movie star kind of handsome. The kind that people stopped on the street to watch and go by. He's not as tall as Derry, and he's a little slimmer, but he has a fine, drawn, sensitive face that somehow managed to be reckless and thoughtful at the same time. He's got dark gold hair that he combs back long and silk and straight, and in the summer the sun bleaches it shining wheat gold. All right. Yeah, so he got jumped. I'm going to get some water. His eyes were dark and brown, likely dancing recklessly, laughing eyes that can be gentle and sympathetic. One moment, and blazing with anger the next, he had his dad's eyes, but Soda's one of a kind. He can get drunk in a drag race or dancing without ever getting near alcohol. In neighborhood, he's rare to find a kid who doesn't drink once in a while, but Soda never touches a drop. He doesn't need to. He gets drunk on just the plain living, and he understands everybody. He looked at me closely. I looked away heartily because if you want to know the truth, I was starting to bawl. I knew I was as white as I felt, and I was shaking like a leaf. So just put his hand on my shoulder. "Easy, pony boy. You ain't gonna hurt you no more." "I know," I said, but the ground began to blur, and I felt hot tears running down my cheeks. I burst them away impatiently. "I'm just a little spooked, that's all." I drew a quiver breath and quit crying. You just don't cry in front of Derry, not unless you hurt like Johnny had been that day. We found him in the vacant lot. Compared to Johnny, I wasn't hurt at all. So I rubbed my hair. "You're okay, kid, pony. I had to grin at him. Soda can make you grin no matter what. I guess it's because he's always grinning so much himself. You're crazy, Soda, out of your mind. Derry looked as if he had like to knock his heads together. You're both nuts. Soda merely crooked one eyebrow and tricked his picked up from Two-Bit. It seems to be run in this family. Derry stared at him for a second, then cracked a grin. Soda Pop isn't afraid of him like everyone else and enjoys teasing him. I just as soon as tease a full-grown grizzly, but for some reason Derry seems to like being teased by Soda. One gang had chased the Socs to their car and heaved rocks at them. They came running towards us now, 4 lean, hard guys. They were all as tough as nails and looked it. I had grown up with them, and they accepted me, even though I was younger because I was Derry, and Soda's kid. Brother and I kept my mouth shut good. Steve Randall was 17, tall, lean, and thick. Greasy hair. He kept combed and complimented squirrels. He was cocky, smart, and Soda's best buddy. Since grade school, Steve especially was cars. He could lift a hubcap quicker and more quickly than anyone in the neighborhood. But he also knew cars upside down and backwards, and he could drive anything on wheels. He and Soda looked the same gas station, Steve part-time and Soda full-time, and their station got more customers than any other in the town. Whether that was because Steve was so good with cars or because Soda attracted girls like honey draws flies, I couldn't tell you. I liked Steve only because he was Soda's best friend. He didn't like me. He thought I was a tag-along and a kid. Soda always took me with them, and they were at places if they weren't taking girls, and they bugged Steve. It wasn't my fault. Soda always asked me. I didn't ask him. Soda doesn't think I'm a kid. Two-Bit Matthews was the oldest of the gang and the wisecracker of the bunch. He was about 6 feet tall, stocky build, and very proud of his long, rust-colored sideburns. He had gray eyes and a wide grin, and he couldn't stop making fun and remarks to save his life. You couldn't shut that guy up. He always had to go his 2 bits worth, and hence his name. Even his teachers forgot his real name was Kenneth, and we hardly remembered it had one. Life was one big joke to Two-Bit. He was famous for shoplifting in his back-handled switchblade, which he couldn't have acquired without his first talent. And he was always smarting off the cops, and he really couldn't help it. Everything he said was so irresistible funny that he just had to let the police in on it to brighten up their dull lives. Yeah. Ooh. Well, welcome in. He liked fights, blondes, and for some unfathomable reason, school. He was still a junior at 18 and a half, and he never learned anything. He just went for kicks. I liked him real well because he kept us laughing, and otherwise, as well as the other things, he reminded me of Will Rogers. Maybe it was the grin. If he had to pick the real character of the gang, it would be Dallas Winston, Dally. I used to like to draw his picture when I was in a dangerous mood, for when I could get his personality down in a few lines, he had an elfish face with high cheekbones and a pointed chin, small sharp animal teeth, and ears like a lynx. His hair was almost white, and he was blonde. He didn't like haircuts or kicked out in the back and tufts and curled behind his ears. And along the nape of the neck, his eyes were blue, blazed ice, cold with the hatred of the world. Dally had spent 3 years on the wild side of New York and had been arrested at the age of 10. He was tougher than the rest of us. Tougher, colder, meaner. The shade of difference that separates a greaser from a hood. And wasn't present in Dally. He was as wild as the boys in the downtown outfits. Like Tin Shepherd's game. In New York, Dally blew off steam in gang fights. But here, organized gangs are rarities. There was just small bunches of friends who stick together, and a warfare is between the social classes. A rumble, when it's called, is usually born of grudge fight, and the opponents just happen to bring their friends along. Oh, there was a few named gangs around, like the River Kings and the Timber Street Tigers, but the Southwest, there's no gang rivalries, so Dally, even though he could get into a good fight sometimes, had no specific thing to hate. No rival gang, only Socs, and you can't win against them no matter how hard you try because they got all the breaks, and even whipping them isn't going to change that fact. Maybe that's why Dally was so bitter. He had a quite reputation. They had a file on him down at the police station. He had been arrested. He got drunk. He rode in rodeos, lied, cheated, stole, rolled drunks, jumped small kids. He did everything. I didn't like him, but he was smart, and you had to respect him. Johnny Cade was the last and least. If you can picture a little dark puppy that has been kicked too many times and is lost in a crowd of strangers, you have Johnny. He was the youngest next to me, smaller than the rest, and was a slight build. He had big black eyes and a dark tan face. His hair was jet black and heavily greased and combed to the side, but it was so long that it fell in shagged bangs across his forehead. He had a nervous, suspicious look in his eyes. And that beating he got from the Socs didn't help matters. He was the gang's pet, everyone's kid brother. His father was always beating him up, and his mother ignored him except when she was hacked off at something, and then you could hear her yelling at him clear down at the house. I think he hated the worst thing, getting whipped. He would have run away millions of times if he hadn't been there. Well, hello, Maddie. How are you? We're reading The Outsiders. If it hadn't been for the gang, Johnny would never have known what love and affection are. I wiped my eyes, hurried. Daddy, catch him. Nope, that got away this time, the dirty two-bit went on cheerfully, calling the Socs every name he could think of. That kid's okay. I'm okay. I tried to think something to say. I'm usually pretty quiet around people in the gang. I changed the subject. I didn't know you were all out of the cooler yet, Dally. Yeah, Johnny got beat up pretty bad. And they talked about that. And now Pony Boy got beat up a little bit and got cut by a knife. But yeah, it sounds like Johnny got really beat up. Good behavior. Got off. Dally lit a cigarette and handed it to Johnny. Everyone sat down to have a smoke and relax. A smoke always loosens the tension. I had quite trembling and my color was back. The cigarette was calming me down. Two-Bit cocked me an eyebrow. Nice looking bruise you got there, kid. I touched my cheek gingerly. Really? Two-Bit nodded straight. Nice cut, too. Makes you look tough. Tough. Tough are two different words. Tough is the same as rough. Tough means cool, sharp, like a truff-looking Mustang or a truff record. In our neighborhood, both are compliments. Steve flicked his ashes at me. What are you doing? Walking by your lonesome. Leave it to good old Steve to bring up something like that. I was coming home from the movies. I didn't think. You don't ever think, Derry broke in. Not at home or anywhere it counts. You must think at school with all those good grades you've been bringing home. And you always got your nose in a book. But you don't ever use your head for common sense. No siree, bub. And if you did have to go by yourself, you should have carried a blade. I just stared at the hole in the toe of my tennis shoe. Me and Derry just didn't dig each other. I never could please him. He would have hollered at me for carrying a blade if I had carried one. He had brought home B's, he wanted A's. If I got A's, he wanted to make sure they stayed A's. And if I was playing football, I should be studying. If I was reading, I should be out playing football. He never hollered at Soda Pop, not even when Soda Pop dropped out of school or got tickets for speeding. He just hollered at me. Soda was glaring at him. Leave my kid brother alone, you hear? It ain't his fault. He likes to go to movies. And it ain't his fault the Socs like to jump us. And if I had been carrying a blade, it would have been a good excuse to cut him to ribbons. Soda always takes up for me. Derry impatiently. When I want my kid brother to tell me what to do with my other kid brother, I'll ask you. Kid brother. But he laid off, and he always does when Sodabot tells him to. Most of the time. Next time you get one of us to go with you, Pony Boy, Two-Bit said. Any of us will. Speaking of movies, Dally yawned, flipping away his cigarette butt. I'm walking over to the nightly double tomorrow night. Anybody want to come and hunt some action? Steve shook his head. Me and Soda are picking up Evie and Standy for the game. He didn't need to look at me the way he did right then. I wasn't going to ask if I could come. I never tell Soda because he really likes Steve a lot, but sometimes I can't stand Steve Randall. I mean, sometimes I don't like him. Derry sighed. Just like I knew he would. Derry never had time to do anything anymore. I'm working tomorrow night. Dally looked up to the rest of us. How about you all? Two-Bit, Johnny Cake, you and Ponyboy want to come? Me and Johnny, I'll come, I said. I knew Johnny wouldn't open his mouth unless he was forced to. Okay, Derry. Yeah, since it ain't school night, Derry was really good about letting me go places on the weekends. On school nights, I could hardly leave the house. I was planning on going boozing up tomorrow night, Two-Bit said. If I don't, I'll walk over and find y'all. Steve was looking at Dally's hand. His ring, which he had rolled a drunk senior to get, was back on his finger. You break up with Savannah again? Yeah, and this time it's for good. That little broad was two-timing me again when I was in jail. I thought Savannah and Evie and Sandy and Two-Bit mini blondes. They were the only kind of girls that would look at us. I thought tough, loud girls would wore too much eye makeup and giggled and swore too much. I liked Soda Pop's girl Sandy just fine, though. Her hair was natural, blonde, and her laugh was soft like her blue eyes. She didn't have a really good home or anything and was kind of greaser, but she was a real nice girl. Lots of times I wondered what other girls were like. The girls who were bright-eyed and had their dresses decent length and acted as if they liked to spit on us and giving us a chance. Some were afraid of us and remembering Dallas Winston. I didn't blame them, but most looked at us like we were dirt. Gave us the same kind of look that the Socs did when they came by in their Mustangs and their other cars and yelled, "Grease!" at us. I wondered about them, the girls, I mean. Did they cry when their boys were arrested like Evie? Did when Steve got hauled in? Or do they run out on them the way Savannah did Dallas? But maybe their boys didn't get arrested or beaten up or busted up in radios. Well, thank you. Yeah, I've added quite a bit to my book nook. It's growing a lot. I was still thinking about it a while. I was doing my homework for the night, and I had to read Great Expectations for English and that kid Pip. And he reminded me of this. The way he felt, remarked lousy because he wasn't a gentleman or anything. And the way that girl kept looking down on him, that happened to me once. One time in biology, I had to dissect a worm and the razor wouldn't cut, so I used my switchblade. The minute I flicked it out, I forgot what I was doing or I would have never done it. This girl right beside me kind of gasped and said, "They are right. You are Hood." That didn't make me feel so hot. There were a lot of Socs in that class, and I get put into A classes because I'm supposed to be smart. And most of them thought it was pretty funny. I didn't though. She was a cute girl. She looked really good in yellow. We deserve a lot of our trouble, I thought. Dallas deserves everything he gets and should get worse. If you want the truth, oh, thank you for that, Tam. Yeah, we're reading The Outsiders. We just got jumped by the gang of Socs, and we're talking to our gang members here. And Two-Bit, he doesn't really want to need half the things he swipes from stores. He just thinks it's fun. Oh, that's a nice one. Thank you for that. He's fun to swipe everything that has nailed down. I can understand why Soda Pop and Steve get into drag races and fight so much, though. Both of them have too much energy, too much feeling, with no way to blow it off. Rub harder, Soda. I heard Derry mumbling. You're going to put me to sleep. Yeah, Mandy, it's one of my favorites. So when I teach 9th grade English, this is one of the books I have them read, and it's just great to help them just get into, what high school life was in the 60s, and then also some of their own problems. They can work through it because they're teenagers, and this is a book about teenagers written by a teenager. So it's really a unique book in that way. Derry didn't deserve to work like an old man, and when he was only 20, he had been a real popular guy in school, and he was captain of the football team. Yeah, you had to read it in school in the 80s? Yeah, it's a popular high school book, and he had been voted Boy of the Year, but he just didn't have the money for him to go to college, even with the athletic scholarship he won. And now he didn't have time between jobs to even think about college, so he never wanted anything and never did anything more, except work out in gyms and go skiing with some old friends of his sometimes. I rubbed my cheek where I had turned purple. I looked in the mirror, and it did make him look tough, but Derry had me put a Band-Aid on the cut. I remember how awful Johnny had looked when he got beaten up. I had just as much right to use the streets as the Socs did, and Johnny had never hurt them. Why did the Socs hate us so much? We left them alone. I nearly wanted to sleep over my homework trying to figure it out. Soda Pop, who had jumped into bed by the time, yelled sleepily for me to turn off the light and get to bed. When I finished the chapter I was on, I did. Laying beside Soda, staring at the wall, I kept remembering the faces of the Socs that surrounded me. That blue shirt the blonde was wearing, and I could still hear a thick voice. "Need a haircut, greaser?" I shivered. "You cold, pony boy?" "A little," I lied. Soda threw one arm across my neck and mumbled something drowsily. "Listen, kiddo, when Derry hollers at you, he don't mean nothing. He's just got more worries than anybody his age ought to. Don't take him serious, you dig, pony? Don't let him bug you. He's really proud of you because you're so brainy. He's just because you're the baby. I mean, he loves you a lot, Shavy." "Sure," I said, trying for Soda's sake to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. "Soda, yeah? How come you dropped out? I never have gotten over that. I could hardly stand it when I left school." "'Cause I'm dumb. The only thing I was passing were auto mechanics and gym." "You're not dumb." "Yeah, I am. Shut up and I'll tell you something. Don't tell Derry, though." "Okay. I think I'm going to marry Sandy after she gets out of school and I get a better job and everything. I might wait till you get out of school, though, so I can still help Derry with the bills and stuff." "Tough, huh? Wait till I get out of, though, so you can keep Derry off my back?" "Don't be like that, kid. I told you he didn't mean half of what he says." "You're in love with Sandy? What's it like?" He sighed happily. It's real nice." In a moment, his breathing was light and regular. I turned my head to look at him, and in the moonlight, he looked like some Greek god came to earth. I wondered how he could stand being so handsome. Then I sighed. I didn't quite get what he meant about Derry. Derry thought I was just another mouth to feed and somebody to holler at. Derry loved me? I thought of those hard, pale eyes. Soda was wrong for once. I thought Derry doesn't love anyone or anything except maybe Soda, and I didn't hardly think of him as being human. I didn't care. I lied to myself. I didn't care about him either. So it was enough, and I'd had him until I got to school, and I don't care about Derry. But I was still lying, and I knew it. I lied to myself all the time, but I never believed him. Oh, this part makes you laugh? Yeah, I'm trying to remember the movie of who was cast as Soda Pop that was supposed to be such a attractive young man. Was that Tom Cruise's part? I think Patrick Swayze was Derry. I'm pretty sure. If anybody watched the movie. Oh, Rob Lowe. Okay. So Rob Lowe. Okay, Rob Lowe was Soda Pop. Okay. Yeah, so they're great actors all in this whole movie. And a very fantastic story, and I like it a lot. Okay. Oh, Rob Lowe's Soda Pop. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. And then Patrick Swayze was Derry. Yeah. Like, it pretty like started their guys' career. And it's crazy that this was written when she was 15 and 16. This is crazy. But yeah, no, I really like this book. Really gets your, if you being a teacher, it really helps your students, like, yeah, bow tie. But it really helps your students, like, get into it because this is, like, it's not necessarily stuff that's going on in their lives, but they can relate to it because a lot of these kids are their age. Thank you for the corn, by the way. A lot of these kids are their age. And they still get into fights in schools, and you still have that stuff. You want to be tough. You want to be cool. Unfortunately, the rich and poor thing is still a ongoing conflict. But what's nice about this book is this book put in here a hope for that to change possibility. So that's what we're going to be reading towards is Pony Boy here doesn't understand, the conflict going, and he's willing to not let that conflict define him. Right now, he's kind of just going with the flow, but we'll see as he goes on these chapters of how he grows as a person. And they all kind of grow up in their own way. All right, we're going to read. So, just to give you an idea. So, the last book we finished was A Wrinkle in Time. Ah! The octopus. Yeah. Wrinkle in Time. This book is another one that was, again, I usually do 9th grade or 10th grade. And this is a really good one if you want to do science fiction. It really reminds me of a Doctor Who story of what all's going on in this. But we read this. It was our last book that we read, and it was very cool. Personally, I'm reading East of Eden. Really great book. Another story of the Garden of Eden, but set in California instead. I do love John Steinbeck. This is one I haven't read of John Steinbeck. When I do John Steinbeck in my classrooms, I usually do The Pearl, or I do the what's the other one we read? Grapes of Wrath, which is the more popular one. But I haven't read East of Eden, and everybody loves East of Eden, so I'm going to check that one out. And then our October... Get out of here! Quit it! The one that we're going to be reading in October is Frankenstein. So, I started this journey as Professor Fox with Dracula, and I decided, this was one of my first choices. I was either going to read Dracula or Frankenstein, but in October I'm going to be reading Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. So that should be an exciting book. If you like Gothic literature and monster stories for October. So we're going to continue on with Outsiders. So if you're just joining us, we have gotten to the point where Pony Boy got jumped at the movies, and he likes to go see the movies. He's the smart kid in the gang, and he got jumped. His older brother saved him, and they talked about Johnny getting jumped before. They're what they call a greaser, which you got the classic greaser look there. Looks like John Dean. And they are what you would call those rough kids at the school. And they get jumped by the Socs, which are your football stars, your rich kids, the ones that have the cars. They have the Mustang, which was a famous car back then. Thank you, Jesse. Those are some very nice gifts. I appreciate you a lot. But yeah, preps versus punks. That is right. And and that still goes on today. That same dynamic is in almost every school in the United States. It is a thing. And that's why we read this book. So chapter 2. Dally was waiting for Johnny and me under the street light at the corner of Pickett and Sutton. And since we got there early, he had time to go over the drugstore and the shopping center and goof around. We bought Cokes and blew the straws out of the waitress and walked around eyeing things that were lying out in the open until the manager got wise to us and suggested to us to leave. He was too late, though. Dally walked out with 2 packets of Cools under his jacket. Oh, my gosh. That made me think about... Yes, Cools the cigarettes. Yes, that's right. That's what those are. I was thinking in my head for a moment that it was Kool-Aid, but that's the cigarettes. Kind of like Newports. Then we went across the street and down Sutton a little way to the Dingo. There were lots of drive-ins in town. The Socs go to the Way Out and into Rusty's, and the Greasers go to the Dingo and to Jay's. A dingo is pretty rough hangout. There's always a fight going on there, and once a girl got unalive there. We walked around talking to all the greasers and hoods, and we knew leaning in the car windows and hoping into the back seats and getting in and on one was running away, and who was in jail and who was going with who, and who could whip who and who stole, and what and when and why. And we knew about everybody there. There was a pretty good fight while we were there between a big 23-year-old greaser and a Mexican hitchhiker. We left when the switchblades came out because the cops would be coming soon and nobody in his right mind wants to be around when the fuzz shows. We crossed Sutton and cut around behind Spencer's Special, the discount house. They chased two junior high kids across the field for a few minutes, but then it was dark enough to sneak in over the back fences of the nightly double drive-in movie. It was the biggest in town and showed 2 movies every night, and one weekends 4, you could say, and you were going to the nightly double. And every time you go, all over town. We all had the money to get in. It only cost $0.25 if you're not in a car, but Dally hated to do things the legal way. He liked to show that he didn't care whether there was a law or not, and he went around trying to break laws. We went to the rows of seats in front of the concession stand to sit down. Nobody else was there except 2 girls who were sitting down front. Dally eyed them coolly, then walked down the aisle and sat right behind them. I had a sick feeling that Dally was up to his usual tricks, and I was right. He started talking loud enough for the 2 girls to hear. He started out bad and got worse. Dally's could talk awful dirty, and he wanted to, and I guess he wanted them. And I felt my ears get hot. Too bitter even Steve would have gone right along with him, just to see if they could embarrass the girls, but the kind of kicks just doesn't appeal to me. I sat there struck dumb, and Johnny felt hastily to get a Coke. Oh, the corn live, yes. Lots of corn. Anybody else go to drive-ins? So we have a drive-in near us, and it's called the South End. And I do like going to the drive-in specifically for the double feature. And it just feels like you go back in time, and I just like it. And it's something that I did a lot with my son in the summer when he was young. He never made it to the second movie. He would fall asleep in the car. But it was a nice time to go, and you'd always get snacks, and it was just a great time at the drive-in. And you imagine back then, they got in a drive-in for $0.25. Ain't that cool? It was just $0.25 back then. Yeah. And a lot of places don't have the drive-ins. Oh, well, you have to check it out and see if you have a drive-in near you. Ours is called the South End, and we can go there, and it's a nice one. But yeah, they're going away, and it's hard to find them. But I really like the drive-ins a lot. But during the time this book takes place, the drive-in was like the main hangout. I wouldn't have felt so embarrassed if they had been greasy girls. I might even have helped old Dallas. But those 2 girls weren't our kind. They were tough-looking girls, dressed sharp and really good-looking. They looked about 16 or 17. One had a short dark hair, and the other had long red hair. The redhead was getting mad or scared. She sat up straight, and she was chewing hard on her gum. The other one pretended not to hear Dally. Dally was getting impatient. He put his feet up on the back of the redhead's chair, winked at him, and beat his own record for saying something dirty. She turned around and gave him a cold stare. "Take your feet off my chair and shut your trap." Boy, she was good looking. I've seen her before. She was a cheerleader at our school. I always thought she was stuck up. Dally merely looked at her and kept his feet where they were. "Who's gonna make me?" The other one turned around and watched us. "That's the greaser that jocks for the stash. Gee, sometimes," she said, as if she couldn't hear her. I heard the same tone a million times. "Greaser, greaser, greaser." Oh, yeah, I heard that tone before. Too many times. Oh, thank you for the corn, Mercury. What are they doing at the drive-in without a car? I thought the Dallas said, "I know you two. I've seen you around rodeos. It's a shame you couldn't ride bull half as good as you can." "Talk it." The redhead said coolly and turned back around. That didn't bother Dally in the least. You two barrel race, huh? You better leave us alone, the redhead said in a bittering voice, or I'll call the cops. Oh, my. Dowdy looked bored. You got me scared to death. You ought to see my record sometime, baby. He grinned slightly. Guess what I've been in for? Please leave us alone, she said. Why don't you be nice and leave us alone? Dally grinned ruggishly. I'm never nice. Want a Coke? She was mad by then. I wouldn't drink it if I was starving in the desert. Get lost, Hood. Dally merely shrugged and strode off. The girl looked at him. I was half scared of her. I half scared of all nice girls, especially Socs. Are you going to start on us? I shook her head wide no. Suddenly she smiled. Gosh, she was pretty. You don't look the type. What's your name? I wish she wouldn't have asked me that. I hate to tell people my name for the first time. Pony Boy Curtis. Then I waited for the, you're kidding. Or that's your real name, or one of the other marks I usually get Pony Boy, my real name, and personally I like it. The red just smiled. That's an original and lovely name. My dad was an original person, I said. I got a brother named Soda Pop, and he says so on his birth certificate. My name's Sherry, and I'm called Cherry because of my hair. Cherry Valance. I know, I said. You're a cheerleader. You go to the same school. You don't look old enough to be going to high school, the dark-haired girl said. I'm not. I got put up in a year of grade school. Cherry was looking at me. What's a nice, smart kid like you running around with trash like that? I felt myself stiffen. I'm a grease, same as Dally. He's my buddy. I'm sorry, Ponyboy, she said softly. Then she said briskly, your brother Soda Pop does he work at a gas station at DX, I think? Yeah. Man, your brother is one doll. I might have guessed you were brothers. You look alike. I grinned with pride. I didn't think I looked one bit like Soda, but it's not every day I hear Socs tell me they think my brother's a doll. Didn't he used to ride rodeos, saddle bronco? Yeah, Dad made him quit after he tore a ligament, though he still hang around rodeos a lot. I've seen you two-barrel race. You're good. Thanks, Cherry said, and the other girl who was named Marcy said, how come we didn't see your brother at the school? He's not any older than 16 or 17, is he? I winced inside. I told you, I can't stand that Soda dropped out. He's dropped out. I said roughly, dropped out? Made me think of some poor, dumb-looking hoodlum wandering the streets breaking our streetlights. He didn't fit my happy-good-lucky brother at all. It fitted Dally perfectly, but you couldn't hardly say it about Soda. Johnny came back, and then he sat down beside me. He looked around for Dally, then managed to say hi to the girls who tried to watch the movie. He was nervous, though. Johnny was always nervous around strangers. Cherry looked at him, sizing him up as she had me. Then she smiled softly, and I knew she had him sized up all right. Dally came striding back with an armful of Cokes. He handed one to each of the girls and sat down beside Cherry. This might cool you off. She gave him an envious look, and then she threw her Coke in his face. That might cool you off, Greaser. After you wash your mouth and learn to talk and act decent, it might cool you off too. Tyler wiped the Coke off his face and with his sleeve, and he smiled dangerous. If I had been Cherry, I would have bent it over there. I knew that smile. Fiery, huh? Well, that's the way I like 'em. He started to put his arm around her, but Johnny reached over and stopped him. Leave her alone, Dally. Huh? Dally was taken off guard. He stared at Johnny in disbelief. Johnny couldn't say boo to a goose. Johnny gawped and got a little pale, but he said, you heard me. Leave her alone. Dally scrolled for a second. If he had been me, or Two-Bit, or Soda, or Steve, or anyone but Johnny, Dally would have flattened him without a moment's hesitation. You just didn't tell Dally Winston what to do. One time in a dime store, a guy told him to move over at the candy counter. Dally had turned around and belted him so hard he knocked a tooth loose. A complete stranger, too. But Johnny was the gang's pet, and Dally just couldn't hit him. He was Dally's pet, too. Dally got up and stalked off, his fists jammed in his pockets, and frowned in his face, and he didn't come back. Cherry sighed away. Thanks. He had me scared to unaliving. Johnny managed a admiring grin. You sure didn't show it. Nobody talks to Dally like that. She smiled. From what I saw, you do. Johnny's eyes got red. Johnny's ears got red. I was still staring at him, and he had taken more than nerve from him to say what he had said to Dally. Johnny whispered the ground Dally's walked on, and I had never heard Johnny talk back to anyone, much less his hero. Marcy grinned at us. She was a little smaller than Sherry. She was cute, but Sherry Valance was a real looker. You all sit up here with us. You can protect us. Johnny and I looked at each other and grinned suddenly, raising his eyebrows so that they disappeared under his bangs. Would we ever have something to tell the boys? His eyes said plainly. We had picked up 2 girls, and classy ones at that. Not any grease broads or for us, but real socks. Soda would flip when I told him. Okay, I said nonchalantly. Might as well. I sat between them, and Johnny sat next to Sherry. How old are you? Marcy asked. 14, I said. 16, said Johnny. That's funny, Marcy said. I thought you were both 16. Sherry finished for her. I was grateful Johnny looked 14. And he knew it, and he bugged him somehow, something awful. Johnny grinned. How come you all ain't scared of us like you were Dally? Sherry sighed. You two are too sweet to scare anyone. First of all, you didn't join in Dally's dirty talk, and you made him leave us alone. And when we asked you to sit up here with us, you didn't act like it was an invitation to make out for the night. Besides that, I've heard about Dallas Winston, and he looked as hard as nails and twice as tough, and you two don't look mean. Sure, I said tiredly. We're young and innocent. No, Sherry said slowly. Look at me carefully. Not innocent. You seem too much to be innocent. Just not dirty. Dally's okay, Johnny said this, and I nodded. You take up for your buddies no matter what they do when you're in a gang. You stick up for your members. If you don't stick up for them, stick together and make like brothers. It isn't a gang anymore, it's a pack, a snarling, distrustful, bickering pack like the Socs. And there's social clubs, or the street gangs in New York, or the wolves in the timber. He's tough, but he's a cool guy. I'd leave you alone if I knew it, I said, and that was true. When Steve's cousin from cool guy. I'd leave you alone if I knew it, I said, and that was true. When Steve's cousin from Kansas, nice girls go by on a street corner and say all kinds of lousy stuff about him. Don't ask me why. I don't know why. Well, Marcy said faintly, I'm glad he doesn't know us. I kind of admire him, Sherry said softly, so only I heard that when we settled down to watch the movie. Oh yeah, we found out why they were without a car. They'd come with their boyfriends, but walked out on them when they found out the boys had brought some booze along. The boys had gotten angry and left. I didn't care if they did, Sherry sounded annoyed. It's not my idea of a good time to sit in a drive-in and watch people get drunk. You could tell by the way she said it that her idea of a good time was probably high class and probably expensive. They decided to stay and see the movie anyway. It was one of those beach party movies with no plot and no acting, but a lot of girls in bikinis and some swinging songs. So it was all right. We were all 4 sitting there in silence when suddenly a strong hand came down on Johnny's shoulder and another one on mine, and a deep voice said, Okay, greasers, you had it. I almost jumped out of my skin, and it was like having someone leap out from behind a door and yell boo at you. I looked fearfully over my shoulder, and there was, 2-Bit, grinning like a Cheshire cat. Glory 2-Bit, scare us to unaliving. He was good, a voice imitation. He had sounded for all the world like a snarling sock. Then I looked at Johnny, and his eyes were shut, and he was as white as a ghost. His breath was coming, and 2-Bit knew better than to scare Johnny like that. I guess he'd forgotten. It's kind of a scatterbrain. Johnny opened his eyes and said weakly, Hey, 2-Bit. 2-Bit messed up his hair. Sorry, kid, he said. I forgot. He climbed over the chair and plopped down beside Marcy. Who's this? Your aunt's? Grandmother's twice removed? Sherry said softly. I couldn't tell if 2-Bit was drunk or not. It's kind of hard to tell with him. He acts boozed up sometimes, even when he's sober. He cooked up one eyebrow and then the other down, which he always does when something puzzles him or bothers him, or if he feels like saying something smart. Shoot, you're 96 if you're a day. I'm a knight, Marcy said brightly. Two-Bit stared at her admiringly. Brother, you're a sharp one. Where'd you two ever get to pick up by a couple of greasy hoods like Pony and Johnny? We really picked them up, said Marcy. We're looking about shanghaiing them. They're worth 10 camels apiece at least. 5, Two-Bits disagreed. They don't talk. I don't think they say anything, Johnny Cake. Ah, cut it out, Johnny broke in. Dally was bothering them, and when he left, they wanted to set with them to protect him against wisecrack greasers like you, probably. Two-Bit grinned. Before, Johnny didn't usually get sassy like that. We thought we were doing a good if we could get him to talk at all. Accidentally, we didn't mind being called greasers by another greaser. It's kind of playful then. Hey, where's old Dally anyways? Hey, Kara, how you doing? We're reading The Outsiders, and we're at the movie theater right now. He went hunting. Some action. Thank you for that. Booze or dames or a fight. I hope he didn't get jailed again. He just got out. He'll probably find a fight, Two-Bit stated cheerfully. That's why I came over. Miss Timothy Shepard and his company are looking for whoever so kindly slashed their car's tires, and since Miss Curly Shepard spotted Dallas going it, well, does Dally have a blade? Not that I know of, I said. I think he's got a piece of pipe, but he busted his blade this morning. Good. Tim will fight fair if Dally don't pull a blade on him. Dally shouldn't have any trouble. Sherry and Marcy were staring at us. You don't believe in playing rough or anything, do you? A fair fight isn't rough, Two-Bit said. Blades are rough. So are change and heaters and pool sticks and rumbles. Skin fighting isn't rough. It blows off steam better than anything. There's nothing wrong with throwing a few punches. Socs are rough. They gang up on one or two, or they rumble each other with their social clubs. Us greasers usually stick together, but when we do a fight among ourselves, it's a fair fight between two. And Dally deserves whatever he gets, because slashing tires ain't no joke when you've got to work to pay for them. He got spotted too, and that was his fault. Our one rule besides stick together is don't get caught. And he might get beat up. He might not either way. There's not going to be any blood feud between our outfit and Shepard's. If we needed them tomorrow, they'll show. If Tim beats Dally head in, and then tomorrow asks us for help in the rumble, we'll show. Dally was getting kicks. He got caught. He pays up. No sweat. All right. Yeah, so Dally was blowing off steam. Slicing tires, I guess. There we go. Alrighty. Yeah, boy, Sherry said sarcastically. Real simple. Sure, Marcy said, unconcerned. If he gets unalive or something, you just bury him. No sweat. You dig up, okay, baby. Two-Bit grinned and lit a cigarette. Anyone want weed? I looked at Two-Bit admiringly. He sure put things into words good. Maybe he was still a junior at 18 and a half, and maybe his sideburns were too long, and maybe he did get boozed up too much, but he sure understood things. Sherry and Marcy shook their heads at his offering of cigarettes, but Johnny and I reached for one. Johnny's color was back, and his breathing was regular, but his hand was shaking ever so slightly. Oh, I gotta do the make sure I'm a person live thing. Oh, no. There we go. It was Socs, I said nervously, because there were plenty of Socs milling around, and some of them were getting me funny looks, as if I shouldn't be with Sherry or something. And I didn't like to talk about it either, Johnny getting beat up by me, but I started in talking a little faster than I usually do because I don't think about it either. It was almost 4 months ago. I had walked down to the DX station to get a bottle of pop and to see Steve and soda because they always buy me a couple bottles and let me help me work on the cars. I didn't like to go on weekends because then it's usually a bunch of girls down there flirting with soda. All kinds of girls, Socs too. I don't care too much for girls yet. Soda says I'll grow out of it. He did. And it was a warmish spring day with the sun shining bright, but it was getting chilly and dark by the time we started for home. We were walking because we had left Steve's car at the station at the corner of our block. There's a wide open field where we play football and hang out, and it's often the site for rumbles and fistfights. We were passing it, kicking rocks down the street, and finishing our last bottle of Pepsi when Steve noticed something lying on the ground. He picked it up. It was Johnny's blue jeans jacket, the only jacket he had. "Looks like Johnny forgot his jacket," Steve said, slinging it over his shoulder to take it by Johnny's house. Suddenly he stopped and examined it more carefully. There was a stain of the color of rust across the collar. He looked at the ground. There were some more stains on the grass. He looked up and across the field with a sickening expression on his face. I think we all heard the low moan and saw the dark, motionless hump on the other side of the lot. At the same time, Soda reached him first. Johnny was lying face down on the ground. Soda turned him over gently, and I nearly got sick. Someone had beaten him badly. We were used to seeing Johnny banged up. His father clobbered him around a lot, and although it made us madder than heck, we couldn't do anything about it. But those beatings had been nothing like the Johnny's face was cut up and bruised and swollen. There was a wide gash from his temple to his cheekbone. He would carry that scar all his life. His white t-shirt was splattered with blood. I just stood there trembling with the sudden cold. I thought he might be unalive. Surely nobody could be beaten like that and live. Steve closed his eyes for a second and muffled a groan as he dropped on his knees beside Soda. Somehow the gang sensed what had happened. Two-Bit was suddenly there beside me, and for once his comical grin was gone, and his dancing gray eyes were stormily. Derry had seen us from the porch and ran toward us, suddenly skidding into the hall. Dally was there too, swearing under his breath and turning away with a sickened expression on his face. I wondered about it vaguely. Dally had seen people unalive on the streets of New York West Side. Why did it look so sick now? "Johnny!" Soda lifted him up and held him up against his shoulder. He gave the limp body a shake. "Hey, Johnny Cake!" Johnny didn't open his eye, but there came a soft, questionable, "Soda?" "Yes, me," Soda said. "Don't talk. You're going to be okay." There was a whole bunch of them, Johnny went on, swallowing, ignoring Soda's command. "A blue Mustang, fool. I got so scared." He tried to swear, but suddenly started crying, fighting to control himself and sobbing all the more because he couldn't. I had seen Johnny Cake whooping with a 2x4 from his old man and never let out a whimper. That made it worse to see him break now. Soda just held him and pushed Johnny's hair back out of his eyes. "It's okay, Johnny Cake. You're gone. They're gone now. It's okay." And finally, between sobs, Johnny managed to gas out his story. He had but been hunting our football to practice a few kicks when the blue Mustang had pulled up beside the lot. There were 4 Socs in it. They had caught him, and one of them had a lot of rings on his hand. That's what had cut Johnny's up so badly. It wasn't just that. They had beaten him half to unalive, and he couldn't take that. They had scared him. They had threatened him with everything under the sun. Johnny was high-strung anyway, a nervous wreck from getting belted every time he turned around and from hearing his parents fight all the time. Living in those conditions might have turned someone else rebellious and bitter. It was unaliving Johnny. He had never been a coward. He was a good man in a rumble. He stuck up for the gang and kept his mouth shut good around the cops. But after the night of the beating, Johnny was jumpier than ever. I didn't think he'd ever get over it. Johnny never walked by himself after that, and Johnny, who was the most law-abiding of us, now carried his pocket a 6-inch switchblade. He used it, too, if he had ever gotten jumps again. They had scared him that much. He would unalive the next person who jumped him. Nobody ever going to beat him like that again. Not over his unalive body. I have never forgotten that Sherry was listening to me, but when I came back to Raleigh, I looked at her. I was startled to find her as white as sheet. "All Socs aren't like that," she said. "You have to believe me, Pony Boy. Not all of us are like that." "Sure," I said. "That's like saying all you greasers are like Dallas Winston. I bet he's jumped a few people." I discussed that. It was true. Dally had jumped people. He had told us stories about muggings in New York that made the hair in the back of the neck stand up. But not all of us were that bad. Sherry no longer looked sick, only sad. "I bet you think the Socs have it made, the rich kids. The West Side Socs. I'll tell you something, Pony Boy. It may come as a surprise. We have troubles you never even heard of. You want to know something?" She looked me straight in the eye. "Things are rough all over." "I believe you," I said. "We better get back out there with the popcorn, or Two-Bit think I ran off with his money." We went back and watched the movie through again. Marcy and Two-Bit were hitting it off. Both had the same scatterbrained sense of humor, but Sherry and Johnny and I just sat there looking at the movie and not talking. I quit worrying about everything and thought about how nice it was to sit with a girl without having to listen to her swear or to beat her off with a club. I know Johnny liked it too. He didn't talk to girls much. Once in a while, Dallas was reform school. Sylvania had started hanging on to Johnny's sweet-talking him, and Steve got a hold of her and told her if she tried any of her tricks with Johnny, he'd personally beat the tar out of her. Then he gave Johnny a lecture on girls and how sneaking little broad like Sylvania would get him into trouble. As a result, Johnny never spoke to girls much, but whether that was because he was scared of Steve or because he was shy, I couldn't tell. I got the same lecture from Two-Bit after we picked up a couple girls downtown one day. I thought it was funny because the girls on one subject even Derry thinks I was use my head about. And it really had been funny because Two-Bit was half crook when he gave me the lecture, and he told me some stories that about me he wanted to crawl under the floor or something, but he had been talking about the girls like Sylvania and the girls he and Dally had the rest picked up in the drive-ins in downtown. He never said anything about Socky girls, so I figured he was all right to be sitting there with them, even if they did have their own troubles. I really couldn't see what Socs really have to sweat about. Good grades, good cars, good girls, Mustangs and nice cars. Man, I thought it. If I had worries like that, I considered myself lucky. I knew better now. All right. So we'll stop there. We're on chapter 3. So Pony Boy is getting the first taste of, it might not be so nice on the sock side. But yeah, I really enjoy this book, and thanks you for coming to my reading. This is Professor Fox. We're reading The Outsiders in September. I'll be definitely back on here on Saturday to continue this book. Hold on here. There it is. I was looking for my bookmark. And so we just finished Wrinkle in Time on there. Wrinkle in Time, a nice science fiction book. This one kind of reminds me of Doctor Who. This is the last thing that we read on the Professor Fox channel. It was a pretty nice read. But it's another one I recommend for you to read. And then in October, this all started with Dracula. So in October, I decided I wanted to read another monster book. And this is a classic, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. That should be a really good read, too. If you ever read Frankenstein, you can enjoy it again. But should be a good one for October. And this one is a book I haven't read yet. John Steinbeck. I've liked other John Steinbeck books. This is one of my personal read, East of Eden. So if you have any comments on East of Eden, I'd like to hear it. But yeah, I'm planning on reading this. I have read of John Steinbeck. I read Grapes of Wrath, The Pearl, Of Mice and Men. But I've heard good things about East of Eden. So it's like a retelling of the Garden of Eden, but set in California. So it should be good. But that's all I got for you guys today. I will definitely be back next Saturday. I might try to sneak in another read, maybe on Monday or Tuesday. We'll see how work goes. But it's been kind of, with the new school year, it gets rough for Professor Fox. But take care. I'm glad you guys can take by, and I really appreciate you, Lake, stopping in, being a fan. It's always great to see you. Take care. Professor Fox signing out.